There are hundreds of kilometers of tunnels underground for the sole purpose of attacking Israel and hiding the wealthy, corrupt officials underground. Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know who I am, my name is Tal and I'm also known as the Traveling Clad here online. For the last couple weeks, I've been here in Israel doing some investigative on-the-ground videos trying to understand the truth of what's happened here since the October 7th war that broke out between Israel and Hamas. I should also clarify at the beginning of this video, I am Israeli and I just dropped an amazing diss track on Yahya Sinwar, the military leader of Hamas. Please go check it out. Fantastic video. Today we're going to dig a hole even deeper, almost like a Hamas tunnel, into the Three Stooges of Hamas. The Three Stooges of Hamas at the moment hold a collective $11 billion leeching off of the foreign aid from both UNRWA and the UN as a whole. And of course, the wonderful Palestinian people have had everything stolen from them by their precious leaders of Hamas. If the 11... You gotta be fucking kidding me, man.
6 hours later.
If the theft of $11 billion doesn't suit your fancy, we can move on to the West Bank, where we have the amazing Abu Mazen. Abu Mazen, or Mahmoud Abbas, is the most lovable character. He's sort of like the grandfather of Palestine. In addition to stealing billions from foreign aid, he has actually held a sort of de facto dictatorship of the West Bank, the Fatah party, and the Palestinian Authority for the last 17 plus years. So either way you look at it, Palestinian leadership has been top notch. But today I want to focus on Hamas. Hamas and the Three Stooges of Hamas, which we're going to name just now, most notably the beautiful Ismail Haniyeh, which I believe looks like the crossbreed between a weird bear and a pug, Musa Abu Marzouk, which, you know, the picture will speak for himself, and Khalid Mashal, which, to be fair, he just kind of looks like a pervert. I don't know what it is. He looks like just some guy he's just up to no good. And we can never forget about our big-eared beauty, Yahya Sinwar. I mean, he's always around. Busy hiding under tunnels right now, but he's always around. Unfortunately for Yahya Sinwar, he doesn't get the luxuries of living in the multi-billion apartment complexes in Qatar, so we'll just sort of shoo him out. Get out. Go away. Little rat. Go. I want to start off by just naming some ground facts. On the ground right now, I've got a friend on YouTube. His channel is called Other Barak, and he just dropped a video yesterday showing what Gaza looked like before the October 7th massacre. I highly recommend you watch that video because it'll give you a good insight into some of the references I'm going to be talking about. In 2004 and 2005, Israel prepared and then eventually withdrew from the Gaza Strip totally. When my parents, for example, were growing up here in Israel, and when my grandparents had to escape from Iraq because they were kicked out by Muslim Arab nationalists who wanted to ethnically cleanse the Jewish population from Iraq, when they settled here in Israel, and when my parents were born, they used to frequently go down to the Gaza area, to the shuk, or the souk, the market, the fishing port, the beaches down there. It was an area where Jews and Arabs, for the most part, did coexist even after the State of Israel was established. While there was always an element of violence, the same way that there is today in places like Nablus or Hebron, where Jews and Arabs do kind of coexist, there was sort of always this element of danger. So at one point, for the purposes of peace and striking a peace deal and establishing the first part of the official Palestinian state, Israel withdrew all of its citizens that were Jewish. Remember that point. I don't know what sounds more like apartheid or an ethnic cleansing to me than that, but Israel withdrew all of its Jewish residents from the Gaza Strip, gave full autonomous control to the Palestinian Authority in the Gaza Strip. There was no blockade at that point. There was no occupation. There was no army force. They even had their own airport and their own airline. In 2006, in spite of the Palestinian Authority's control of the Gaza Strip, there was a bloody civil war that was fought between the PA, Fatah party, to Hamas, which was basically starting to take control through the citizens, which was democratically elected after their civil war with the PA to take full control of the Gaza Strip in this sort of military, authoritarian, theologian regime that wants to essentially oppress its people. The thing is, a lot of people like to claim that the civilians in Gaza didn't want this, or this was brought onto them. Something that's important to remember is that Hamas was democratically elected by the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, and it has extreme favorability up until this day. Even after the October 7th massacre, both in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, it has been polled by independent Arab sources, not Israeli, not Western sources. And these articles came out not so long ago that the Palestinian people overwhelmingly, over 70 to 80%, support Hamas and support the October 7 massacres, both in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank. So if you kind of want to use the funny term of a government for its people, by its people, Hamas is sort of representing what Palestinian people as a whole want. Obviously, there are exceptions to the rule, and obviously the living conditions now in the Gaza Strip are horrific, and there are a lot of people in the West Bank who have horrible lives with checkpoints, constant raids into their villages. But the problem is this overarching sense of extremism that exists in these areas. And a lot of this has to do with the ideology that Hamas actually brings to the table. I don't want to get into the Muslim Brotherhood, because that is a whole other organization and ideology that is rampant through the Middle East that most Middle Eastern governments do not want to associate with. So even the extremism that exists within the Arab governments and the Middle Eastern Muslim countries that exist in this world, because most of those governments are pretty extreme, even they, for the most part, are challenged by the extremism of the Muslim Brotherhood. And there's very few official governments that actually attach themselves to the connection of what the Muslim Brotherhood stands for. Hamas, on the other hand, they really value the Muslim Brotherhood, and they actually consider themselves a big part of it. And for the most part, they are a big part of it. That's the reason why Hamas and all its activities are pretty much banned in Egypt, because the Egyptian government is petrified of the Muslim Brotherhood. And in that case, they're scared of what Hamas would actually do in their country if they got a stronghold there. It's also one of the big reasons why Palestinians have been oppressed, not only in Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan, but also in Egypt. And a lot of times they're unwilling, these governments, to actually give them any sort of sense of citizenship, keep them as refugees, because they are afraid that a lot of Palestinians will be sort of inclined to join the ideologies of Hamas. It's something that's actually really rampant. And if you look at Palestinian society as a whole, both in the West, both here, and you see the immense support that Hamas is getting in protests all over the United States, you'll see that there actually is an inclination for a lot of Palestinians to sort of lean towards what Hamas is telling them. Underlying brainwashing that's been happening to Palestinians, unfortunately, since the creation of the ideology of what being Palestinian actually means. And whether it's come from the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who was holding hands with Hitler in the 1930s, to now Abu Mazen pay for slaves program in Fatah in the West Bank, where they literally pay for Palestinians to kill Jews in the West Bank and all over Israel. And the families of so-called shaheeds or martyrs are paid for actually killing Jewish people or Israeli citizens. You can see that there is a sort of common thread of extremism that exists within Palestinian society. So here I brought up the wonderful Hamas Charter. Many of you guys have heard of it. Maybe you've never seen it quoted exactly. So I've got an English translation of it. This is from 1988. It's been adjusted a little bit recently in the recent years because they did want to step away from some of the extremism and be accepted in a global light. But you best believe October 7th, 2023 was not too long ago. I remember when it happened. It was just 5 months ago, where Hamas terrorists came in and they murdered, set on fire, beheaded people with shovels. All the video evidence is online. You can watch all of it. It's pretty much all available in different Telegram groups. I don't recommend, because I think I have serious PTSD from just seeing the videos of my fellow country folk and fellow Jews being tortured in ways I could never believe. If you do want to see the proof, if people tell you that these things didn't happen, all of the proof is online. Hamas literally entered Israel with GoPros strapped to their chests, drugged up, and filmed their entire fun experience of destroying part of the south of Israel for a day, and laying siege on innocent civilians. So whether or not people tell you that this 1988 Hamas charter is outdated and they've changed their lines, just remember what they did on October 7th is very much in line of what they believe in this Hamas charter. Just before I read this, I want to make a particular plea to people in the West. I grew up American Israeli, right? I hold both nationalities. I consider myself in a lot of ways very American, very Western-minded, in a lot of ways very Eastern-minded, very Middle Eastern, because I grew up in the best of both worlds. My grandparents are literally refugees from Iraq. So I grew up with a world with both my mom speaking Arabic and keeping very cultural traditions, not very American, sort of white in any sort of way, shape, or form, but I've grown up in a very diverse background. So I just want you to really, as an American or as a Westerner, listen to the words I'm saying and tell me if this aligns with your values. When you are out in the streets chanting Free Palestine from the river to the sea, when you're out in the streets in different protests and you are praising Hamas or the Houthis, whose literal slogan is death to America, death to Israel, curse upon the Jews, Islam will be the victory of the world, or some bullshit like that. When you are out there protesting for those things, I just want you to remember what I'm about to read and tell me, does this align with your values? The day enemies steal part of Muslim land, jihad is the sort of the suffering or struggling. Jihad becomes the personal duty of every Muslim. With regard of the usurpation of Palestine by the Jews, it is a must to fly the banner of jihad. That means the propagation of Islamic awareness among the masses, locally in Palestine, the Arab world, and the Muslim world. The spirit of jihad must be disseminated within the Islamic nation. The enemies must be engaged in battle, and every Muslim must join the ranks of jihad and become warriors like the mujahideen. So you can see here, this is why, and one of the reasons why a lot of people like to say there's a lot of civilian casualties, there's a lot of people who are dying, and while the numbers cannot really be trusted because a lot of them are coming from Hamas themselves, the Gaza Health Ministry is completely run by Hamas, you have to remember that even the women and the children are fed these ideas of martyrdom, of being a shaheed, of dying for the sake of Allah, dying in spite of the Jews, dying to help the cause of eradicating the Jews from their land. There is no idea of coexistence. There is no idea of peaceful living. The idea is continuously to live in a struggle, in a jihad against the Jewish people until the land is liberated. And the thing that a lot of Palestinian people don't realize, especially not in Gaza, is because they don't have interaction with us, is that we're not going anywhere. There is no Allah, there's no prophet that's going to save you from Jewish people existing in their ancestral homeland. You cannot get rid of the Jewish people that are here. And that's something that hasn't been talked about enough within Palestinian society. There's not enough Palestinians who stand up and say those words. There's this false sense of hope that they'll actually be able to someday eradicate Jewish people from this land, as if we're some sort of curse upon the land. Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. The Day of Judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. That's Article 7. And Hamas regards itself as a spearhead and a vanguard of the circle of struggle against world Zionism. Islamic groups all over Arab world should also do the same, since they are best equipped for their role in the fight against the warmongering Jews. That's Article 32. I think it's clear as day that Hamas as an organization, when I look at it as an Israeli, is something that makes me feel very unsafe. I think the lack of distinction between even the basic root of Zionism, which 80% of Jewish people around the world are, 80% of Jews around the world love the state of Israel, support the state of Israel, and a vast majority of them actually need the state of Israel to exist, or have needed the state of Israel to exist at some point in their life to actually be alive. I think a lot of people forget that fun little fact. So knowing all this about the Hamas charter, and truly knowing that this is something that they still believe in, when you look around you at this idea of the Gazan concentration camp, or that Gaza was an open-air prison before, knowing the fact that there were people who lived an immense luxury life in Gaza, probably via the means of corruption and theft from international aid groups. And for the most part, the government authority that was supposed to protect these people, create them a better life, start making diplomatic ties with Israel to improve the living of everybody living in the Gaza Strip, the 2 million people that are living there. Instead of doing that, there are kilometers upon kilometers, hundreds of kilometers of tunnels underground for the sole purpose of attacking Israel and hiding the wealthy, corrupt officials within the organization underground, literally using the people on top as a human shield. I don't know how much more clear of day this could be. Seeing it as a resistance movement is one thing. If this was a small guerrilla group of people who were, uprising against a corrupt state, but you have a group of people who are brainwashing children, stealing most of the money and hiding it underground or in luxury villas and hotel rooms in Qatar, openly. This is happening openly. And convincing and leaving the civilian population to attack other innocent civilians who are the descendants of refugees just across the border. There's nothing just about that. There's nothing there to protest about. And truly, as ironic as that catchphrase has become, the only statement really should be free Palestine from Hamas. Because Hamas has been a cancer that has taken Palestinian society by hold. And as lovely as our rat, Yahya Sinwar, is, he is like the ultimate sort of result of that. Minus the big ears, you can see that a person like him, pretending to be some sort of amazing military leader, convincing the Palestinian people and the Hamas militants that attacking Israel would be a good idea, and then fucking off with the money underground, and fucking off with the safety underground. There's nothing to be proud of there. There's nothing to stand up for there. Hamas is no organization to protest for or to rally for. There have been a plethora of videos that are coming out from the Gaza Strip right now of Palestinians who are over it. They're done. They want peace. They want to live a life of peace and dignity. And that's what I believe we should be rooting for. That's what I believe we should be protesting for. As an Israeli, I want to see my Palestinian brothers and sisters succeed. I want to see them come out of the rubble of this and create a good life for them.
حماس. احنا بدنا سلام، احنا بدنا اولادنا يروحوا على المدارس، حرام اولادنا يتشردوا، حرام اطفالنا يقعدوا في الشوارع. هذا كله مين مسؤول عنه؟ مين المسؤول عن هذه الاشياء؟ ليش حماس هيك بتسوي فينا؟ كنا يا سنوار مش الجيش الاسرائيلي، انت اللي بتقتل فينا قاعد. حرام عليك، حرام عليك يا حماس.
This 20-year history of being indoctrinated, brainwashed, and lied to led us to nothing. So we have to try something new. Maybe actually give peace a chance. And that's all I can hope for. Hope you guys subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Love you long time. Goodbye, Klats.